St George Illawarra barely fired a shot in 2 opening defeats. Brett Kimmorley, they've now won 5 straight. Where's the turnaround come?
Well, the most informed side of the competition at the moment. Obviously, now they're coming up to being, are they considered the premiership threat? I think this Saturday's game against the Roosters will determine whether they are a genuine contender threat, because if they beat the Roosters, that gives them great credibility. That gives them a great side that they've beaten, and then everyone stands up and says, well, hang on a sec, they are the genuine contenders. They're defensively good. You know, they're conceding 1.4 tries per game, and that's on the back of the first 2 weeks being extremely poor. So the best defensive sides generally win the competition. I know a lot of it's about the attack in the competition, but the best defensive sides win. They won the comp in 2010 being the best defensive side. They played pretty boring in attack. They just had Jamie Soward's kicking game. Defence builds pressure. Defence builds confidence in the football side. So they're starting to get their attack in order a little bit. You know, obviously with Benji Marshall and Gareth Widdop, there's enough flair there to say that they'll score points. Josh Dugan does a great job at the fullback position. I think Trent Merrin's back in form as well, which helps sort of some ball playing opportunities. But they're playing tough. They're playing an honest style of football. And you always hear Paul McGregor say about the side, well, we're going to be honest. We're going to put our bodies on the line, and we're going to have everyone accountable to their own actions. So at the moment, they're doing that extremely well. It's a test this weekend, but I can't see why, with the closeness of the competition, the ability with the game changing year by year, I'm going to say that the Dragons at the moment, with confidence and pride, are actually contenders to be in this competition.
You talk about Paul McGregor and the defence. Is he purely responsible for that resurgence in that area?
I think he's responsible for players taking credibility for their game. I think too often the coaches cuddle players instead of being very honest and upfront with them. I think last year when he took over, he made some very honest statements to some players. They mightn't have liked it at the time, but they probably do appreciate it now. It's a bit of a wake-up they needed. Benji Marshall, now training hard, looks fitter than ever. So he's had the fear of the coach probably in the off-season. Dean Young is a player that probably didn't play to much great heights or talent, but he's their defensive coach. And what they've done is they've stripped it right back to basics to say, let's teach you how to tackle properly. I know they're NRL players, but it doesn't mean you know how you tackle properly. Technique sometimes goes out. So they've learned how to tackle properly. They've learned how to scramble for each other and just keep turning up for each other. Their patterns might be a bit wrong sometimes, but they get away with it through willingness to fight and turn up for each other. So Dean Young deserves a bit of a pat on the back. And obviously the coach for being honest when he first took over. The rewards are coming now.
I must admit, when they signed Benji Marshall last year, I thought it was an awful decision. But he's playing a little bit differently to what he was when he was in his heyday.
Yeah, it certainly is. Benji Marshall in the old days where it was just touch football was gone. You know, he probably let himself down, and he's admitted that he let himself down. At the end of the Tigers days, he probably was a little bit overweight and probably thought he was a little bit comfortable in his football ability. He goes off to the rugby union and probably failed because he didn't train hard enough. He come back last year and we still saw glimpses of the old Benji Marshall a bit last year where it was the hot and cold, it was the overplay and the inconsistency. So he's worked really hard in the off-season to get fit. By getting fit, it means you probably make calmer choices or better choices because you're in better positions to execute play. So he's had to take a bit of a backward step and wind the clock back a bit to get his career back on track, because his career last year, and it was at the crossroads of probably finishing in the NRL if he had another stinker of a season this year. So he's worked hard to get back. It was a big risk though, you know, signing for 3 years or 4 years on the back of him failing at the Tigers. It was a show of faith, I suppose, for the Dragons staff, but they've now starting to get that show of faith back from Benji buying into it as well.
You talk about their attack. Where are the improvements they need to make to be up there with like the Roosters and the Sharks and other teams in the competition?
Well, they don't have the talent, unfortunately. You know, the talent will allow you to score some points. They play a pretty basic style of football. You know, Mike Cooper showed a bit last week. I think Trent Merrin has stopped being that ball-playing sort of forward that he once was. So there's no second phase coming from him. They're staying controlled. They're building game plan, and they're minimising their own mistakes, which is okay at the moment. But when big games start to arrive, you probably need to make sure you can execute some plays. There's not much strike on the edges. So whatever they're doing, they need to do it extremely well, and they need to make sure they all turn up and 17 players play extremely well for the Dragons, because the roster's not as good as some of the other rosters. But that doesn't mean you can't beat the good sides. But I'm just very wary of sometimes when the better football sides get their game in order, the Dragons mightn't be able to hang on.
Just quickly, top 8 or top 4?
Oh, I think they'll make the top 8. They're in too good of a situation now not to make the top 8. Top 4 will be probably handled by what happens throughout Origin, because they're not going to be overly affected. Dugan and Merrin will disappear, so that's going to hurt them a little bit, but it's more what the other sides are going to lose, and you certainly struggle throughout Origin. So I think they'll scrape through the Origin period okay, and they'll be knocking on the back of the top 4.
Dragons just need a little bit more in attack, but certainly a top 8 side.